You're listening to the Adventuredesk podcast.
Angel, thanks for being on the show. This is the second episode of the Adventuredesk podcast. Appreciate you being here today. I know you very well. We've worked together for a long time in the industry, but for people that are seeing you for the first time, give them a little bit of background on your current role, what you're doing right now.
Okay, so as you already said, my name is Angel. I work as a manager, operations manager for one of the biggest DMCs in Peru. And yeah, I've been working there for, it's going to be almost a year actually.
Yeah. And tell me a little bit, you come from the jungle basically. You have an interesting introduction into tourism, and you've had a steady growth in your career. So talk us through a little bit about where it started for you. Where were you before tourism, and how you got started and how you got to where you are?
Yeah, it always sounds cool to say you come from the jungle, and I think that aspect of me coming from a remote place in the north part of the country, kind of gave me that feeling that I think I should get involved in the industry in order to show people the beauty of my region. That was always in my head. But anyway, so I come, as you said, from a place up in the north called Rodriguez de Mendoza. I was born there, I was raised there, and then I moved to Lima when I was 17 years old. Just willing to go to Europe. I just wanted to go somewhere else because the country was not necessarily offering options. So I just wanted to go there because I have family there, and I thought that could be a good move for me to go and work there. I tried and I waited long enough that I got tired, and then I said, wow, I should do something while I'm waiting to go to Europe. So back on those years it was really hard to get a visa and all of that stuff. So and you need money to go there. So I decided, to study something that I always wanted, related to traveling and stuff like that. So I applied to college to study, to be a tour guide. I did that for 3 years, and at the same time I was studying English. While I was studying, I started to work in different museums here in Lima. I still remember those places when, sometimes I just drive by and I still have friends there, like in downtown Lima, the cathedral or Santo Domingo museum. So those were the places where I started. And then I managed to get my degree and worked as an official tour guide here in Lima. And I found wow, this is, I don't think tourism is just being a guide in Lima. I always felt like there was something else outside of the city and outside of the country. So I applied to work as a tour leader for a Canadian company, and then that company gave me the chance to travel within South America and around the world. So
so tell me a little bit about what were the kind of key roles, or what inspired you to actually choose tourism?
Okay, so I always had that traveling thing within me. I always, when I was a child, I played soccer back in my town with my friends, and I think I was really good at that. That we had to go and play in different schools in different towns up in the north, and we had to travel. And whenever we were traveling, I was always looking through the windows, and I said this is amazing. I started to see things outside my hometown, and I remember going through Chachapoyas, for example, and I remember seeing tourists there, backpackers maybe, and seeing them like speaking a different language, and I was like, this is something cool. So when I moved to Lima, I talked to my brother about it, like, you know, willing to do or study something while I'm waiting to go to Europe. And then, yeah, we came across this place where, you know, they had everything that matched with me, with everything I wanted and I needed. And yeah, that's, you know, all the courses, all the subjects that they had sounded really cool, and I went for it.
Yeah. And you've gone from guide, and you've worked in museums as a guide, then going to kind of a guide throughout the city of Lima, then moving on to a tour leader role where you took people all around Peru and South America. And then after that, you started working in more office and management roles. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about the transition of going from someone that's outside in the field all the time to now you're working in an office. It's much more of a place where you're sitting down a lot. How was that transition? What about it was difficult or easy?
It's still a challenge nowadays. It's not something that I would say I will never do it again. I mean, being a tour leader is kind of like being a manager, a different type of manager. You just manage your group of travelers, you manage your suppliers while traveling, you know, while on tour. Yeah, I think that part it's kind of like related to what I'm doing now as a manager, behind the scenes, sitting on the desk, managing not necessarily one tour, managing all the tours with a group of people that are also at the same time managing number of tours and numbers of groups of people and stuff like that. So I think it's a bigger challenge. Being a tour leader is you're just worried about your group. Being a manager, an operation manager in this industry, you're just worried about the entire operations.
Yeah.
You know, and in there, of course, you gotta sit back and understand and make sure that everything that you have in your mind, everything that you always do day to day, you have to make sure you put it in paper. And I think that's very crucial, that's very critical, because if you want to be a manager, an operations manager, I would say, that's my case. If you don't know well how to explain what you do or what you want your team to do in paper, that's complicated, right?
It gets very difficult to just kind of say things. I think we've both been in situations where we know we've said something, but we also realize that it wasn't interpreted or understood in the exact same way that we
exactly
thought.
Because we also got to remember that at least my career, and I think yours as well, we come from the field and we developed like a career path very precise that took us to the place where we are right now. As you said already, when you introduced myself, I was a guide, and I was also doing transfers in Lima, then a tour leader, then I was in charge of a group of tour leaders and guides, like managing them, then a manager for operations in Cusco in one office, and now kind of like overseeing a bigger region. That's, I think, an example of a career path that could be used for any company or any industry, really.
Yeah.
And that lack of experience, I mean, that experience, I mean, like all the experience that I gained during these years, more than 10 years, gives me also that chance to recommend or to take the right decision whenever the business needs.
Yeah, I think being at the front lines and kind of leading the tours always helps later on when you're actually trying to take a decision from an office, where you actually then think of how does that actually happen in the field, and you can kind of realize and put yourself into the person's shoes that maybe doesn't have all of the answers, right? Like they have everything they need to know about the group in front of them, but as an operations manager working in the office, you're so connected to other managers, other directors, and you have your panorama is much bigger. So when dealing with some difficult situations, it really helps to be putting yourself in the shoes of the person there and understanding what they're capable of, and also understanding what is expecting far too much from them.
That's true. And I think being empathetic is something crucial in this industry, at least in operations. And of course, for someone like me that, I did the role already, it's much easier to be empathetic with that person, with that group of people that are actually facing a challenge or a situation where I could actually be able to help them faster, better.
So tell me, was there anything that you needed to learn from leaving the field and being in the office?
I think I was young enough that I didn't, when I was doing my first groups as a guy, there was a tour leader. I was young enough that I didn't care about how is that gonna look. So it was just me performing, and really didn't care much about. To be honest with you, I just felt like everything's gonna be great, and I just went with the flow. But being a manager is completely different, right? Because your tourist will go and they'll send you a review, and they're not from here. Everything's gonna be nice. Whereas being in the office as a manager in an office, it was a challenge for me for many reasons. One of them is for someone that is not necessarily from a big city, to get that opportunity to do something, especially in a country like Peru, that everything it's kind of don't get me wrong, I don't want to say like if you come from the mountains or the jungle you don't have those opportunities, but usually opportunities are given more to people from bigger cities. And I didn't feel like I'm gonna be able to make it, and I think I had to study or prepare myself or work more or double. That's what I always thought I'm gonna work double or triple than anyone else. But it was good because later on I see myself and I see other people that probably do the same type of job I'm doing, and I see the results, and I think the results get me where I am right now. So
and I think that's something we have in common, and is that we've come from smaller towns, and being in the city alone is kind of overwhelming, and you're seeing people that have studied in all other kinds of careers and industries, and it can be overwhelming. But at the end of the day, it's like you're going to learn, and the more you work at it and the more you put into it, is the more you're going to get out of it, right?
That's true. Again, as I said before, it's just a matter of making sure, even though everything that you read, you study, all the theory, make sure you just put it in practice. And I think in my situation, it was a bit of both. Everything that I've learned, I've studied, I read in books, trying to make it happen in the day-to-day job, but at the same time being from the field, experiencing things and living the adventure and the adrenaline of being a guide and tour leader, then being able to bring that in theory as well. So it's kind of very cool and very interesting, that kind of opportunity we had. It's I think we could talk hours and hours about the great things that happened to us already in 10-12 years. But I think everything that happened made me to be not necessarily a manager. I think I somehow see myself as a leader.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, early on, as we start coming into those management and leadership roles, you start to understand what the difference is. And one of the things that I feel is like, nobody's a good manager from the beginning. They might be a good leader and have all of these leadership qualities, but to be a manager is actually a job, and it's something that you might have traits of a manager right from the beginning, but just like any other role, there's a whole side of it that you're probably not that great at unless you've been doing it in the past. So I think we've seen ourselves over time being a manager, seen that change.
I guess there are places where you study to be a manager, you know, you study management, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't define you as a great manager.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, looking back to my career, I would say that I had my good and bad moments. I mean, not everything that the management aspect of my role, not everything that it contains. I would say that I love every single aspect. There are things that you like the most, and there are things that you like the least. So, but I think even knowing that, like your weaknesses, and working on that, you kind of understand and care and make sure that those weaknesses don't necessarily generate a bigger mistake within the business.
And I think our industry right now, we're seeing millennials are now choosing experiences over things. It's a big thing, and our industry and travel is, you know, huge part of it is experiences. What do you think young people who are getting into tourism now, what things do they need to take into consideration in their careers in choosing a place to work or in choosing how they want to grow?
I think, it's, you know, we see it every day, even in ourselves. We are in that defined line between the millennium and whatever generation was before that, X generation or something like that. I think we somehow get a little bit overwhelmed or bored of something easily, right? Yeah. My recommendation to these people that are willing to do something in the future within tourism is, if they're looking for a job, I think they should look for, number one, it has to be technology. They need to look for a company that have technology well done in the smartest way possible. That's one. And they also have a good talent department, human resources department that could contribute to their career. Because I mean, one thing is finishing studying, and then the other thing is like going to work. And I think even start working, it's part of your studies. I mean, you continue studying. I think what the future generation should look into a company is that they give them the chance to keep on learning and to keep on studying, and to develop themselves somewhere that they could actually see future. I don't want to get more in details because there is, marketing really needs something related to tourism. We're not, I mean, if you have a company, a tour company, and you want to hire someone that for marketing that it somehow has experience in tourism, it's not many. I think that's also a good opportunity for anyone that is interested in the business to bring that marketing experience and that career within the tourism industry.
I think career growth takes a lot more time than most people are ready for. A lot of people lack patience in that. I know I lacked patience. I'm sure you lacked patience earlier in your career. You wanted to be doing these different things, and sometimes there just is a job that needs to be done. But I think people need to really make sure that they're in a place where the growth is possible, and that they're not just doing a job and that's it, right? There has to be someone they can look up to, or someone, a path there. because and at least you have to be learning while you're there. You have to be doing something where you're learning from it every day. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting still.
And when I said human resources, I kind of like relate that more into the culture of the company. You know, we started. I became a manager when I was 27 years old, and I don't think I was ready for that. So,
right.
And I don't think a lot of people have that opportunity unless your parents own a company or something like that. You just get that for granted, right?
So changing gears a little bit, talk to me a little about how your team has handled all of the unrest we've seen in South America over the past several months. So we've seen protests throughout Chile, Bolivia, Colombia, big protests in Ecuador, and obviously there's a lot that affects tourism when those kind of things happen. But how does your team stay on top of this?
I think you know, it comes with experience. I think the more times you deal with situations like this, the better understanding and the more experience you gain, and you actually know and you have a plan in paper, a process in paper, documented how you're going to proceed, right? I think having the right talent, the right group of people, it's also crucial. When situations like this happen, is when you actually know more your team, and you really know more who the stars are. Right.
Most people want to rise to the occasion here, and they realize that they can't just keep on going to their boss for every little thing. They have to start taking decisions and stepping up to these things.
And it's an opportunity again for us as well. And that's just going back a little bit into the management aspect, is just giving them the right, you know, the freedom to take the decision. Because you already know them, that they got it, they understand, and you know, and you trust them that the decision they are going to take, it's not going to affect the business. It's going to be good. And even if it's not, next time it will be better. But again, I think it's not just one person. It's not about one country, one office. It's just all the offices, all the group of people from different offices coming together and connecting in order to face these situations. You know, I was telling you the other day, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, we face these events. We've been facing these situations, these social problems for so many years.
That and much worse, right?
And of course, like terrorism and all other things, you know, even how the country, how stable the countries are, it's, you know, it kind of like puts into the citizens, the people in general within these countries, a sense of like we are all on an alert. So and I think we have that aspect of like we are willing to help and we're willing to react in a positive way when scenarios like this happen. Of course, there are other countries, for example, Chile. They probably never experienced something like, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, something like that, 30 years ago, they experienced something, but it's not like something that they see every day like we do here in these countries. For them, it was a bigger challenge, bigger than for scenarios in Bolivia, Peru, or Ecuador, because the group of people that work there, I don't think it's only in the company I'm working for, it's in general. They've never experienced something like this before, and they didn't have necessarily a proper plan. So
and I mean, with Chile, it started as something, and it just kind of exploded, and I don't think anyone was prepared for how big that was going to get.
Not even the authorities themselves, not even the president. So imagine if he wasn't ready, if the authorities, if the leaders of the country were not ready, imagine the rest of the people, right?
And what do you think the impact is going to be from partners and people you've spoken to? It's been I know that in Peru it hasn't been a very strong year. It's been kind of flat, but with this kind of unrest, do you see it affecting the growth of tourism going forward?
It for sure. I don't think I'm gonna focus on Peru a little bit now. In the last 3-4 years, we've seen so many strikes in the country. Like even tour guides this year striking in Cusco. Of course, that affects the reputation of the country. It's not a good image of the country, and it's not necessary. And we see, unfortunately, we're feeling it now. We work in the industry that is very. Whatever you do, the impact is going to be bigger than what we expect, and not only for Peru, it's for the region. That kind of like affects the entire region.
Yeah.
So, of course, for sure, we're experiencing that already, and we've seen that people are not coming to South America as we expected, because we're working in infrastructure, we're working here and there, and building airports, more hotels, but our social issues are not helping to this industry, to the tourism industry. And not only that, Matt, I think also the way people are traveling. Maybe there are a lot of people coming to the country, but not traveling with the tour company, with the DMC, right?
Yeah. And actually, that leads into what I wanted to talk to you about. Is we're seeing specifically in Peru and South America more informality in regards to how people are traveling. Specifically, informal companies acting like tour operators, but really not having any of the licenses, certifications, things that they really need to have legally to be operating in the country. How have you seen this change? Because I think it's always been there in places like Cusco, especially. We've seen it, but how has it changed now in the last few years?
I think in countries like South America, by developing countries, I would say, and South America has those the countries. There is a thin line between being formal. I would say, what's being formal in South America? Like, how do we define being formal in South America? How many people? How many formal companies do we have? Especially now with everything that's happening with these big companies. And if in those industries that are not necessarily the tourism industry, mining or construction and stuff like that, you see from outside they look formal, but inside they are not. And we see that every day on TV. Imagine in a lower scale, and you said Cusco, how many informal companies exist? I think more than at least 100. And are we okay? Do we have the rights to call them informal? If even the paperwork and everything that we do within the Dircetures, Minister of Tourism, municipalities is being manipulated. A big example of that is Rainbow Mountain, right? Managed by a community or by 2 or 3 communities, both or those 2 communities fighting against each other in order to have that access to the mountain, and how everything works behind them. And I would say we should start as a country with the authorities, and us, I think we are big players on that. We need to start defining what's being formal, what's being informal.
I think there's a lot of bureaucracy in this, but at the end of the day, I think when when I think of informal, what I'm most concerned about is, you know, transport that shouldn't be on the road, or people that you know, have no business being taking passengers around where there's potential health risks.
Yeah.
Those kind of things.
I think I got you. I think from the operation point of view, I would say even the company that looks formal, if they work with informal suppliers, if they don't have policies and stuff like that, I don't think they should be operating. Yeah. Because you know it, like if the supplier doesn't offer you security, and if you don't see that it's safe, you shouldn't be going to those places, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I would say people are looking for unique places, and sometimes those unique places don't necessarily offer you everything that I'm saying, right?
So you've spent a lot of time in Cusco looking at the different operators out there, the different types of experiences. Give me a little bit of like the good, bad, and the ugly of what's out there. When, you know, I think when we're talking about informal or some of the examples I've given, you know what I mean in terms of kind of the shocking and surprising things out there. You know, there's a lot of programs and activities where you can pay next to nothing and be in a shared service. What are some of the things that you've seen that have been just shocking out of these?
Imagine paying 50 soles to go on a full day tour to the Rainbow Mountain or to Laguna Umantay. 50, 60 soles, and it includes your guides, includes you transportation, breakfast, lunch, entrance fee, everything. That is really, really bad. I mean, and whenever I go to these meetings with these associations, and when I was living in Cusco, I faced with them, and sometimes, you know, they even wanted to go on a fight because you were just trying to make sure that they understand that tourism, it's not just a regular market. It's not, you know, it shouldn't be informal. It's not a place where you go and you buy fruits from, you know, for 50 cents or so. I mean, we're bringing people, we're bringing lives to these places, and you know, we shouldn't be necessarily, you know, I still remember those times in Cusco, looking into knowing how much they pay their suppliers, porters that go on the treks. A lot of companies sell their image as they would be supporting the porters. Yeah. Like, oh, you know, we work with this community, work with that community. Everybody works with those communities, because if those communities wouldn't be there, we wouldn't have porters. Right. I mean, that's just by nature. But how much they get paid, it's something that's been there, and, you know, all the time people talking behind it. But I think paying fair to your suppliers, to your people, could be a big differentiator in the future. Yeah.
So when you were bringing this point up about 50 soles, for people's reference, it's around $20 more or less what these programs would cost for something full day, including all of these things. To someone first time in Peru, or they're looking online and they're seeing this, that looks normal. But for us, or for yourself as an operations manager, you know that there's some hidden risks behind that. What are some of those things that you've seen that don't necessarily have to name names, but what makes something that cheap wrong, that the regular traveler may not see?
I would say, well, there's many things, but like the reason why they're cheap is because they don't pay taxes, right? Mm-hmm. It's just street vendors, cash
changing hands.
They don't give them receipts. If something happens, of course, all Peruvian cars, according to our regulations, they all should have insurance. So they think that, all right, if the car has SOAT insurance, then it's it's all sorted, no
Yeah.
problem. But it's not just that.
It's not taking care of people in the event of an accident and needing.
Yeah, and that's when another pillar of being formal or informal is like paying taxes.
Yeah.
Being able to compete fair.
Yeah.
Fair
To be
trade.
able to report your sales, basically.
Definitely.
And
well, you go to the streets in Cusco, and then it's a lot of people offering you tours here and there, and there is demand. That's why they are there. I think that's where we, and together with the private and the public sector, need to start, making
together,
changes,
right?
working together. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we were talking a little bit about these new destinations coming in. Instagram's been a huge changer. I think it's influenced people in a different way about where they're traveling, and I think the best example that I've seen on this is Rainbow Mountain. I mean, for years and years in Peru, Machu Picchu was this iconic place, and somehow, and I think it's a big part of it has to do with the Instagram effect, but Rainbow Mountain's become this place where basically it's now the second most visited destination in Peru after Machu Picchu. And so where do you think this comes from, and how do you see this growth in the future in a place like Peru?
We must remember that whenever people wanted to go to Machu Picchu, I'm not sure if it was your case when you first came to Peru, you wanted to get the postcard photo of Machu
That's
Picchu.
right.
So if we look back to a few years ago, that was always been the way, or the attraction, or the way how to attract people to come to a destination. Right. So of course now everyone has it on their phone.
That's right.
It's much easier. Everyone is a promoter. Everyone wants to be an influencer. So I think an influencer. I think because of that, and people are having more access to travel, they just want to go and get that photo. And if you're gonna compare Machu Picchu, to get to Machu Picchu, it's more expensive than to get to Rainbow Mountain. We're talking about $20 versus $300-$400.
Right. The difference is there's a lot that comes with the Machu Picchu experience and a guided tour through the ruins. Meanwhile,
and that's exactly, and I think the industry somehow is kind of missing that. We're not going together with technology. I mean, like tour guides, DMCs, tour operators, and you've seen it. Like so many big companies are bankrupt now, and shutting down because they didn't necessarily invest in technology or things like that. I think a tour guide just tells you what you see and history and stuff like that, but I think we need to start kind of like developing and taking the guiding into another level.
Yeah, I mean, we're always going to have these destinations where people are going to get the photo, and that can be the driver. But if a good photo is all they've taken from that experience, then it's a huge missed opportunity, right? Because maybe they got the photo, but what you hope is people are going to recommend going there, and that then becomes based on the services provided and the overall experience, not just that photo. For sure, right?
That's the gap that needs to be covered, right? Like fulfill. I think being able to have professionals to cover the experience and to make sure that it's not only the photo, it's just the experience, what you were saying actually. And I think these are opportunities for sure, and that's why these kind of startup companies are becoming more popular and are the ones that are growing more than just the old school style, no?
Yeah, I mean, there's an absolute demand there, and so if people aren't taking advantage of these new hotspots that pop up based on photos that are creating buzz in our industry, then I mean, I think you have to be ready for that, but you also have to be ready to deliver it in a way that's going to be unique and interesting, because it can't just be mass tourism going for the photo.
Of course, and at the end of the day, those ones that just go for the photo don't necessarily, you could have volume with them, but they don't necessarily economically give you the money that you want for your company, right? I think that niche of clients will always exist, and they were called backpackers in the past. Now they could call themselves influencers if they want, but you see it like with the OTAs, couples, solo travelers, families willing to go to and they pay what needs to be what has to be paid, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where the industry somehow needs to focus as well. I'm not sure what's going to happen in because with technology things change, we change all the time. Technology does change and moves forward. I think if we go align with technology, I mean the industry, we're going to be in a good position.
Yeah, I think you need to embrace it, right? And I think you have to find a way to include it in your business. I mean, we're seeing, the booking.coms are overtaking hotels, Airbnb stays are overtaking hotels. I think we're going to see more and more of that in the tours, activities, in an experiences market as well, whether it's Airbnb or whether it's someone else. It's someone that's going to do it in a different way, and it seems to me that you have to be aware of these platforms, because those are the new ways that these companies are promoting their businesses and working. So at the very least, you have to be using them and be part of them to continue to grow.
And I think tour companies, DMCs, all these big businesses, they need to see this social media, Instagram, as another job. That needs to employ people as well.
That's right.
And I think we're also missing that. We don't necessarily look into social media as an opportunity to take your business into another level.
Yeah. And so talking on Instagram, I mean, on your profile, there's a ton of places that I've never seen, and of all the time I've spent over 10 years almost in Peru now, mostly day trips and those kind of things that you've been doing. Tell me about some of these new hotspots that people are going in day trips. Rainbow Mountain's obviously one of them, but it's not the only one out there.
It's for sure, it's not the only one out there. Around Rainbow Mountain there are other cool ones. People just want to get a good photo with a big snow-capped mountain in the background, and that's also there in Instagram, and people are also going there, discovering there. I would say different lagoons around Rainbow Mountain. Ausangate mountain has so many spots, hidden gems, where you could just go on day trips, hike for a few hours, and you just are so close to the snow-capped mountain and get an amazing photo, or just really close to a lagoon.
And how did you get to Ausangate? What part of that picture specifically on your Instagram was a pretty amazing photo, and I'll put it up on the video so people can see it. But I don't necessarily see that as the experience.
It's not what regular people do. We went there to train tour leaders for an account from the UK, and we just decided to map out the road. Just looked at on Google Maps together with other colleagues, and then we just defined the roads. There is already lodges in the area, and I think there is companies that are specialized in trekking that go through there, but not necessarily do that particular road. So that one, it only takes, you could do it in one day if you're really a pro, a really good hiker, or you just could do it in like 2 days, one night camping somewhere really, really nice, close to the mountains. It's amazing. We did that, camping there, and the following day we got to the Rainbow Mountain like 11:30 when everyone was gone, and it was just us.
Yeah. So
There,
it
right?
sounds like there's still so much opportunity on products to be created and routes to make, and that are just a few posts away from being a new interest on Instagram, right?
And I'm not an influencer, even though the other day we were talking about it. I have almost 1,000 followers, and I think I'm gonna keep on posting photos. People like it, but yeah, that's Cusco. I also go to the jungle to visit my family there, even to Iquitos, to see friends up there. And I do take like day trips here and there. And if you look into what Iquitos is selling on social media, it's all about the river. It's all about the sunset in the Amazon River, all the zoos that we have over there.
So that was going to be my question to wrap this up today. Is you're from the jungle, and I know you spend a lot more time in the mountains. That seems to be what sells more. But I mean, it's very common for people to stay overnight in a lodge in the Amazon jungle. But the Amazon jungle is big. What do you think people should visit, or where do you think they should go to have a unique experience?
I think anywhere. I mean, people go to the jungle thinking that they're gonna go and see animals everywhere, and that's wrong. I think people need to take that chip out of their head, out of their brain, because you go to the jungle, to the Amazon rainforest, or anywhere in the jungle, to be in contact with nature, right? To learn about things that you have that surround you, like flora, for instance, right? That for sure you're gonna see it, yes or yes. Water and all of that, and I think you do learn a lot about how you could be a better human being, how you could actually, and being sustainable, and that's one part of going to the jungle. And the other cool part of going to the jungle that people that don't necessarily spend time is the city. I think Iquitos, for example, is an amazing place. Like, if you go to Iquitos, you probably wouldn't think that you are still in Peru. You go to these massive markets where you'd see, I mean, people sell there everything, like everything that the jungle has. Of course, I mean, we could talk about what's good and what's bad about the markets and stuff like that. But also going to a city, visiting these markets, being in contact with the people, seeing how they live through the eyes of someone local, and going as a local, that's also an opportunity up there.
Yeah, I think the markets in the jungle, because a lot of people visit the markets in a place anywhere in South America, but a jungle market is very different from a city market.
Exactly. I think it's now popular. It's cool to go to a market as a tourist, right? Oh, I'm going to this market, but the markets usually are becoming kind of like touristy markets as well. But going to a real market is going to one of these ones, right? Like going to Belén market, for example, in Iquitos. It could be Iquitos, it could be Pucallpa, Cusco, in the mountains, anywhere that it's not necessarily right next to the hotel or right next to the center or the tourist attractions. Going to the real markets, that's something cool. I think product will always be there. It's gonna be on us and how we want to present it, and understanding what's the tendencies of the travelers, right?
You're going to have to deal with it more on a one-to-one basis of trying to find the right programs that fit different people's individual wants and needs, and not trying to appeal to the masses.
For sure, because that's the tendency. That's how things are going to work, at least for the next few years. So,
all right. Well, Angel, we got through it. Thanks for taking some time today to talk to me about this. I think this wraps up the show, but I'd love to have you on more regularly as we go forward and see what's happening in the industry. I don't know if there's anything that you want to finish off by saying, or want to share where people can find you online. What's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, I think well, first, this is a great idea that you have in mind. I really like this. I feel so comfortable, and for everyone that is watching and probably later on would be part of these interviews, it's great. Highly recommend it. Yeah, I think to everyone that's going to be watching this video, you could find me on Facebook, on Instagram, Angel Grandez. That's it. Just find me by my name there. And a message to the future generation, and even to everyone that it's still there, thinking what's going to happen and with their lives and what they want to do. Keep on dreaming. I think dreaming is what got me here. I always dream about things that I want to do here and there. Of course, not everything is possible because we're human beings. It's hard for us to make everything happen. But I think if people keep on dreaming, taking notes, writing now what they want to do, making a plan, that's going to get them where they want.
Well, thank you. I think what I would add to that is surround yourself by positive people.
For sure.
I think you've been that person for me for a long time, that even as our careers have intersected and we've been in different places at different times, it always seems to come back, and it makes a big difference when you have people that are thinking positively and supporting the other person. So you've been that for me, and I think I've been that for you in certain cases as well. So thanks for that, and I hope to do this again soon.
Perfect, buddy. Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Thanks,
Ciao.
man.